I'm Jim Newman of the Life, the Universe, and Everything Else podcast, and I took a left at the Valley.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
And here we go again. Coming at you from the Absurdity Factory. This is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I'd like to remind you of the fact that the average human body contains enough bones to make an entire skeleton. Joining me as usual is a team that figured out that the equator is apparently long enough to wrap around the world exactly once. She brilliantly deducted that there are more people alive now than when there were fewer. Nancy.
Wow, and they all had enough bones to make skeletons.
That's right.
I think I may have one missing. I'm going to take time out to find out.
It must be a funny bone.
It's a funny. No, I know that one is in place.
She calculated that 3 out of 4 people make up 75% of the population. Teresa.
Oh boy. Nancy's got way more answers than I do.
And his extensive travels have revealed that every 60 seconds in Africa, a whole minute passes. Scott.
Never.
Guys, welcome back. I hope you had a great week.
Oh, yeah, it's good to be back in the Absurdity Factory where I belong. I found a home at last. The wandering Jew has found a home at last.
Well, this is going to be a serious show, as we can tell. We'll be talking to our friend, backed by popular demand, David Fitzgerald, a bit later on. But for now, let's do a bit of chit-chat. I've got lots of news to go on this week. Remember last week when we talked about the attack in London?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the Huffington Post reports that last Sunday, a fair amount of Muslim women, held hands across the bridge in London to condemn the attack. But there was very little press on this.
I saw that on my news feed.
I saw it on a news feed as well.
Yeah.
No numbers were mentioned. I mean, there were pictures, but I mean, why no reports from the media? Isn't that the one thing a lot of people say right away is the moderate Muslims should really condemn these kind of attacks? And here they are doing so, and yet nobody's reporting on this.
I don't know. I didn't. To tell you the truth, and maybe you did, Scott. I didn't see who the source was of that.
No,
I
didn't.
Picture.
I wasn't paying attention.
I've only seen this from the Huffington Post.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anybody else.
Unless it got more international coverage than it. I have no idea.
I have no idea. Maybe they got something in London, in England, obviously, the Independent Telegraph or something.
We know that our news is kind of filtered.
Yeah. And
I hate to say that, but it is. We only see the news that they want us to see, so...
It's still better news than the Americans. Locally, Bombardier apparently gives $32.6 million to executives in bonuses while begging for government subsidies. You know the company? They laid off thousands, and they gave a 50% increase to the top 5 executives.
What company is this?
Bombardier.
Oh.
I'll have to say in English. Bombardier.
There you go.
Bombardier.
Apparently, the feds gave him $372.5 million loan last month. Quebec gave $1 billion in exchange for 49.5% of the stake. And Bombardier still announced 14,500 jobs cut worldwide.
Boo! You suck!
Yet, they paid $32.6 million. This is disgusting.
Yeah.
I had read, and I believe it was yesterday, I don't know if anyone else saw this, I thought that the top person at Bombardier also took a pay cut now because of the outcry from that.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, the backlash on that one, I think the top guy actually took a pay cut.
What,
announced his own pay
what,
cut.
of $10 just to...
I don't know what the cut was. I didn't dig too far into the story.
He gave up 2 Starbucks coffees.
Yeah, shake and bake coupon.
Yeah,
it's an after the fact thing, and really these bozos at the top should have been taking pay cuts right from the start.
Yes, exactly.
And saying, you know what, we're gonna cinch our belts tighter and penny pinch, and we're gonna take the cuts because we know that we're hurting our employee base.
It's sad that it takes the backlash from the press and people getting up in arms and say, "What the hell are you guys doing?" Because you could tell right away that these people they're just trying to get away with it. They're trying, and then
sense
they
of
get
entitlement.
Exactly.
Thank goodness for free press. If it wasn't for the press, there are a lot of things that would still be in the closet that need airing that would never come out.
Exactly. On a sadder note, the UN says there are now 5 million Syrian refugees.
Houston, we have a problem.
5 million. After 6 years of war, Turkey has apparently taken most Syrians, around 2.97 million, and Lebanon and Jordan are close behind. It's kind of sad to see that after 6 years. And I feel really bad. Well, I feel bad for everyone, of course, all the Syrians, but especially the children. These children don't even have a childhood now.
No,
they're completely affected by the war.
It's so difficult to watch the videos of all the suffering, and I know the news people are doing that to create much more awareness, to put pressure on various governments to allow more of the Syrians in. I don't know whether it's working or not, but to focus on children, it's heartbreaking.
It's absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, and this. When you get 5 million people, it's actually more than 5 million that are displaced. You get 5 million refugees, but many more of them are displaced. To close your doors as a country because you might find one terrorist in there or 2 terrorists in there, I think is cruel. It's not like you can send these people back to their country. They have
It's
nothing.
An excuse.
It's
an excuse
totally
not
is.
to accept them.
It totally is.
What some of these countries are finding, though, and this is something that's been realized, when you take in, what did you say, Jordan,
Lebanon, and Turkey was the one who took the most?
They took all those people in. Those people are now looking for work.
Yes.
I mean, they can't live off government dole.
Yeah.
Where do the jobs come from? And this is one of the problems that countries take huge numbers of refugees in. These people want to work. They want to produce for themselves. But there is no work. There wasn't enough work for the people living in the country originally. And now you've added all of those people.
I'm not sure you can say that.
There's an entrepreneurial side to that.
Oh, yes, of course.
Right? So these people are going to find their own way. They are going to be productive members of society. But in the meantime, there's turmoil in those countries because their systems are strapped. The social systems are strapped, and there's just no way to feed these people or take care of them.
And realistically, but speaking very negatively, a portion of that population is going to become radicalized because they don't have any place else to go, and they'll be vulnerable to promises that if they join ISIS or join other groups, that if they don't have a reward on earth, it will happen in heaven, and they will comply. Don't you think?
I'd be curious to see the numbers on that because if you're a Syrian refugee, let's say you're a doctor and you run away with your family and you're moving to Turkey. Turkey's, geez, you're a doctor? Come on in.
Yeah, they're going to accept them.
I think it's a disservice when we say they're Syrian refugees and you equate them right away to welfare. I think that's there will be a percentage of that,
but you've got to look at the fact that a lot of them, even if they are in heavy industry, maybe scientists, possibly journeymen in their trades, but there is no job waiting for them. So now they're in the system because there's no way for them to make money because there's no position for them to fill. And this creates turmoil in the country that they move into. And when the countries accept huge numbers of them, now you've got a problem because they're either displacing people who already have jobs or they're waiting for their opportunity to get a job, to develop those jobs, right?
So you get back to the old argument, is it economics versus being human?
Oh, it is. Yeah. It's purely economics at that point.
Yeah.
Would I ever say no, don't accept them? No, we find a way to make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's what we do as human beings. We find a way to accept them.
Yeah, I mean, during the Great Migration after the First World War, just before it, the United States absorbed a lot of refugees, and there wasn't room for them right at first. They started at the bottom, and as they learned the language and learned the system, they did get absorbed. They got their education, and then they filled a lot of jobs that the current U.S. population didn't necessarily want to fill. So there was that acceptance and the enlarging of opportunities, and maybe we can't take all those three countries and lump them together. They'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of European countries are running into the same issue with the refugees,
exactly.
and there's turmoil caused. But like the old saying goes, and this too shall pass. These people will integrate into the society, and they will find their place.
You would have made a great Mormon, Scott. And from the LOL files,
I'm going to throw up.
Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a conservative in any way, shape, or form. But I was looking at the conservatives in the leadership race in Canada, and these people are loonies.
Shudder the thought.
Oh, they had a week that makes you wonder, what the hell is that? Really the best, the cream of the crop these people can find? Steve Blaney. You know Steve Blaney? He's one of the leaders, apparently. He sent an email with the title, "Should Allah kill all the Jews?" ? He was in the public safety department under Harper, and of course he answers, "I don't think so." But what the hell? You don't send an email when you're a public figure. So, and not to be outdone, Kylie Leach, she buys ad in the Rebel Media website. Remember the Rebel Media website? That's from Ezra Levant.
Oh my!
He's like the far right. He's trying to bring the kind of Fox News north up here in Canada, which is, of course, his site was one of the hosts was actually praised by neo-Nazis. So she likes draconian immigration laws. Of course, not to be outdone by them, the Wild Rose Energy critic offers the NDP free tickets to an event bashing climate change. This is Drew Barnes. There's a little group, a AstroTurf group called the Friends of Science.
With friends like that, you don't need enemies, as the old saying goes.
Exactly. These are climate change deniers, but they use the Friend of Science moniker to try to make you swallow that climate change is a hoax. And he sends out that he's going to buy a ticket for the NDP. Oh my God! And of course, last but certainly not least, our old friend Kevin O'Leary.
Your favorite.
Oh, he wants to override the Constitution to crack down on American refugees.
Override the Constitution.
To crack down on American refugees.
Build
that wall. Build that wall.
What a novel idea. Let's just throw the Constitution away and make up our own rules as we go.
Well, that's right. I mean, an amendment a week, just to keep them coming.
For the past couple of weeks, there have been stories coming up of people crossing the border somewhere in Manitoba or Saskatchewan where there's really nobody there but snow. And there was even the story of this fellow from originally from Africa, came through the United States, and he actually lost most of his digits because of frostbite and stuff like that. But that's a problem. That is a problem to Kevin O'Leary, and that's a big, big issue apparently. And he wants to.
Problem.
Oh, they're just pouring over the borders by the ones and twos. They're just streaming.
If they know these people are out there coming over the border, then get a warm van out there to pick them up when they come over and take them to a hotel and make sure they're taken care of.
Yeah, get them to Timmy's for a donut and a cup of coffee. Let's get
their hands taken care of for the frostbite first.
So apparently he wants to involve.
So they can roll up the rim. Let's get them in.
So apparently Kevin O'Leary wants to use the notwithstanding clause to allow the government to override the Constitution so we can deal with that huge American influx. So Americans, I guess, are all Mexicans now, apparently, and we have to build a wall. Mr. O'Leary, oh my God, and this could be the next Prime Minister.
I think the wall is going to be so O'Leary doesn't get into the States as soon as they find out who he is.
No, Trump will invite him in, trust me.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, he's already flying from Boston to... Anyway.
Oh, my.
I could go on and go on. My dear Nancy, are you ready to do something a bit more sane?
No, but I'm ready to do this day in history.
Let's do that.
That's good. All right, here we go. We're going to do this day in history. Haven't done a full one for a couple of weeks, so we are ready. And as we remember, it's a roundup of those events and people who altered and illuminated the days between March 27th and April 2nd. Starting with March 28th, it was Left-Handed Day. So all of those southpaws, let's raise our hand in celebration. Yeah, we
Two southpaws in here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
You guys should be eliminated.
Half the population in this joint. How about that? We got equal time. Great. All righty. And on Left-Handed Day in 1915, Typhoid Mary. We always use that word now. If someone is a typhoid Mary, they're polluting and poisoning everybody else. There really was a typhoid Mary, and she was the first healthy carrier of a disease ever identified in the United States. And she was put in quarantine where she would remain for the rest of her life. She never contracted, but she gave it, and I think she had gone to various households as a maid or as a cook or something.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's right, it was. March 29th is Youth Day in China, and in 1886 the first batch of Coca-Cola was brewed over a fire in the backyard in Atlanta, Georgia by Dr. John Pemberton, and he had created the concoction as a cure for hangover, stomach ache and headache, and he advertised it as a brain tonic and intellectual beverage. By this time the whole United States should have been smarter than the average bear, right?
I always thought that Coca-Cola was just moonshine gone wrong.
Yeah, well, that too. So he sold it to the public a few weeks after he made it on May 8th, and as we all know, it contained cocaine as an ingredient until 1904 when it was banned by Congress. So much for brain tonic and intellectual beverage. March 30th, I love the name of this in particular holiday. It's called the Baptist Spiritual Shouter Liberation Day, and it occurs in Trinidad and Tobago or Tobago, which is the pronunciation of that?
I think it's Tobago.
I think so too.
It celebrates the repeal of an ordinance in 1917 that prohibited spiritual shouter Baptists from being imprisoned for practicing their faith. April 1st, of course, April Fool's Day. It's also Edible Book Day, an international day where edible books are created, displayed, and small events are held. And if one has to eat words on March 30th, this is the best way to do it.
Better than eating crow, I guess.
Yeah, we could bake a book rather than read one, I guess.
You could almost start a rumor that you eat the book, you will absorb the knowledge by osmosis.
That's good, and wash it down with a Coke.
I
Now we're talking.
I wish.
Okay. And in 1957, Kevin, this is one of your favorites. In 1957, one of the greatest April Fool's hoaxes ever broadcast by all the organizations happened, and BBC perpetrated what they called the Spaghetti Tree hoax.
Yes.
And that was a 3-minute hoax on April Fool's Day by the BBC. And what the BBC did, they purportedly showed a family in southern Switzerland harvesting spaghetti from the family spaghetti tree. Now, at the time, spaghetti really wasn't known that much in the UK, so a lot of Britons were totally unaware that spaghetti was made from wheat and flour and water and was a prepared product rather one that nature suddenly decided.
My soul want a spaghetti tree.
So a number of viewers afterward contacted the BBC for advice on how to grow their own spaghetti tree.
Oh, boy.
So it was a while. Do you think they wanted it grown with the sauce? Do you think there was a sauce tree that you could put next to the spaghetti tree and then a meatball tree? No.
Just make sure you don't mix your spaghetti tree with your fettuccine tree.
I know, it was a great, and if anybody doubts this or anybody wants to continue how cute this was, you can actually look at, go to Google and you can Google the video that was shown by the BBC showing the harvest of spaghetti trees. So if you want a cute video to send to anybody.
I'm wondering, the way the climate is now with people and knowledge, What would happen if you were to make a new video
new
show it in the conservative areas of the States and Canada?
Oh,
I suppose you could do it, but you'd have to pick something other than spaghetti. So once you find the product, I think people would
I mean, the whole thing started with War of the Worlds, right? They hoodwinked entire areas of the population with that. The spaghetti tree. I'm wondering how far a joke like that would go now.
Oh, they'd probably elect Trump. I mean, it's unbelievable to think about, but they'd swallow that.
when you think about it, if there was a spaghetti tree, that would be irrefutable proof of the flying spaghetti.
Spaghetti monster. Yes.
Raw man.
Yes.
I think we've got another.
May his noodly appendage touch us all.
I think we've just got the makings of another
Another
Viva La
romance.
Spaghetti. We've got another
We
show.
could do one of those stories, and instead of finding Noah's Ark, we found a spaghetti tree, and that's proof.
That's great.
And it was on a sunken pirate ship.
This is a serious show.
Oh my! April the 2nd. Moving on. This is really funny. This isn't funny. April 2nd is World Autism Day, but the funny thing about it is that April the 2nd has also been designated International Fact-Checking Day, coming right after April Fool's Day.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I know. So, I mean, that's wonderful to have fact-checking after April Fools.
Perfect.
So we could do the spaghetti thing, but then we could fact-check it the day after and bring everybody back to sanity.
Yeah, but when I'm fact-checking things, I use alternative facts.
The comments of Scott are not necessarily those of Let the Valley subsidiaries.
We're having too much fun. So that, dear listeners, brings to a close another passing parade of interesting, mundane, unusual, and occasionally bizarre, because that's who we be in this group. Events and people that make up this day in history.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I can't let go of that spaghetti thing, because what about spaghetti squash?
Spaghetti squash? You mean, is that included in the hoax, or?
I think you got right there. You got the making of a legend right there.
That's where. Oh, that's the source of where the spaghetti. Gotcha.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, thank you. That you brought us back to Fact Checking Day, which brings it full circle, and now we can move on. Thank you, Kevin, the host. That's why you're the host and we're not.
Are we doing a quack watch today, or is that for next? Okay,
no. I think I don't think quack watch at all.
We could do a quack watch on the spaghetti tree.
On the spaghetti.
If you hear something about a spaghetti tree out there, it's no. But what we do have, let's see, where is it?
So you have to feed Coca-Cola to the tree, and it'll grow spaghetti.
No, but I do have a story. Before we talk to our friend David Fitzgerald, let's do
things that make you go.
Okay, this is a local story. It happened in Montreal, actually. A Montreal mosque is facing a police complaint and rebukes that from a larger Muslim community after a video of an imam delivering a sermon in which he asks for Jews to be killed surfaced online. This is in Montreal. The sermon took place at the Dar al-Akram Mosque in the city's Saint-Michel neighborhood on December 23rd. The video was posted on the mosque YouTube channel 3 days later. The imam in the video is Jordanian cleric Sheikh Mohammed bin Musa al-Nassar. I hope I said this right. He was reportedly invited as a guest to the mosque. In the video, the imam recites in Arabic the verse, "O Muslim, O servant of Allah, O Muslim, O servant of Allah. There is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." This is happening right here in Montreal.
Wow.
But we have nothing to fear from Islam. Nothing.
No,
nothing
of
at
course
all.
No, but what was the reaction?
Well,
Does it say?
I'll continue here. The CBC independently verified the speech and its translation. The controversial verse comes from a religious text known as one of the Hadith, which interprets the words of the action by the Prophet Muhammad. The Hadith in question deals with end times and tells how stones and trees will ask Muslims to come and kill Jews, because apparently stones and trees will do that, apparently in the end time.
Well, if spaghetti is around, why not the stones and trees? I mean, it's a logical conclusion.
I believe in the spaghetti tree more.
That's right.
So the CBC in Montreal has reached out to the Dar al-Akram Mosque for comment and was told no one was available, of course. The video was brought to the attention of the B'nai Birth Canada
B'nai B'rith.
Okay, sorry?
B'nai B'rith.
B'nai B'rith? Okay, thank you. Which filed a complaint with Montreal police. The organization said that it's totally unacceptable that a mosque would allow this to go on. They're inciting violence, essentially. What do you think should be done with that? I mean,
I think in an ideal situation, the mosque would come out and apologize.
At the very least.
Or the imam would apologize, saying, "I meant it," etc., somehow.
I don't think this imam would take it back. I mean,
I'm saying in an ideal world, he would say he didn't, but obviously he did mean what he said.
Yeah.
So
I think, and this is obviously speech that he would be comfortable saying in Jordan. Up here, of course, it's not going to pass the muster, right? I don't know. I think they really should be vetting.
I think we need stronger hate crime laws, and we should enforce those laws.
Well, either that, or do you think, he would be asked to go to a sensitivity? I mean, sometimes they're laughable, the sensitivity classes, but I wonder whether or not he could go to a B'nai B'rith group and they would talk and be able to understand each other and, do this that way rather than,
Well,
why not give the same speech at a Jewish, synagogue?
A Jewish would be a synagogue.
Yeah. So why not have him go to a synagogue and give the same sermon?
Well, chances are, after this complaint was filed, I don't have this in the article here, but chances are that this guy just flew straight back to Jordan.
Oh, okay.
Incite violence and run away.
Well, I mean, if you realize that he's going to come down on you, you're not going to stick around just in case you're charged, right? So I think this guy most likely, I'm speculating here, flew right back. But it does show that, you really got to be careful, not just what you say, but who you bring over to talk.
I think the members of that mosque and members of the local B'nai B'rith, I think they should sit down and discuss it and form some kind of a nice partnership or at least an understanding, and I think that would make everybody happy.
Exactly.
Of course, I look at things that in a more positive way. That's in an ideal world. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
And we all get along over a bowl of spaghetti.
That's right.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you, guys, and we'll go for a pause, and we'll be right back with David Fitzgerald. Stay with us.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
What is secular humanism?
Critical thinking.
Knowledge is freedom. Freedom from ignorance and its offspring, fear.
The BC Humanist Association has been active in the Vancouver area for over 25 years. We offer a friendly and welcoming place to make new friends, as well as free educational lectures. We invite you to join us any Sunday at 10 a.m. in the Oak Ridge Senior Center. Please visit our website for more details, bchumanist.ca.
Hi, I'm the Supreme Irreverend Dr. Randy Tyson from the Legion of Reason Diversion. Join me and my co-hosts, Christine Shelska, Twyla, and Nate Phelps, as we explore issues at the intersection of atheism, humanism, and skepticism. Topics range from alternative medicine to the interference of religion in public policy. We often have special guests to help us understand the topic du jour. Previous guests include biologist Jerry Coyne, ex-Muslim author Ali Rizvi, philosopher Peter Boghossian, and the late physicist Victor Stanger. You can watch us on the Legion of Reason YouTube channel or subscribe to the audio version through your favorite podcatcher such as iTunes or Stitcher. And don't forget to like the Legion of Reason Facebook page.
I'm the satellite, I'm flying cross and round. watch you, you'll be watching me from the solid ground. From the solid ground. Oh, so lonely, floating on and passing by. No one knows me. All I've ever known is a cold pair of eyes.
But the amazing thing is that every atom in your body came from a star that exploded. And the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It really is the most poetic thing I know about physics. You are all stardust. You couldn't be here if stars hadn't exploded, because the elements, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, all the things that matter for evolution, weren't created at the beginning of time. They're created in the nuclear furnaces of stars, and the only way they can get into your body is if the stars were kind enough to explode. So forget Jesus. The stars died so that you could be here today. Okay? And anyway.
I'm the satellite, I'm still there when the day breaks. You only look at me when shadow overtakes.
All right, our next guest does not need an introduction. He does have the distinct honor of being the most downloaded show in our podcast history ever.
Woohoo!
He is the amazing, talented, the incredible, charming David Fitzgerald. David, thank you so much for being with us.
Welcome.
I love that guy.
That guy's so awesome.
So awesome.
Yeah, you need to come up here and do it live, David. That's the next step.
Where in Canada are you guys?
We're just an hour off Vancouver.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So we're in the Fraser Valley. So
theoretically, it could happen.
Yeah, theoretically, you never know. Next time you're in Vancouver, we'll have something happen.
See how many more months of Trump presidency we have, and maybe I'll be right there.
Yes, we have been authorized by our government to extend greetings and asylums.
We take refugee status from.
Are you
Don't worry, you're
refugee
in.
status?
I was posting on Facebook the other day that the whole West Coast should just become Baja Canada.
Oh, wicked.
That would be kind of funny. And the East Coast, so we'll just have the Midwestern United States stay together, and the East Coast.
Yeah, big horseshoe, yeah.
David, many of our listeners do know you, but there might be some new listeners out there. We have probably at least 5 of them now. Would you be so kind to give us the Reader's Digest version of who you are?
Sure. Who is this guy? My name is David Fitzgerald, and I'm probably best known for being the author of a book from 2010 called Nailed, 10 Christian Myths That Show Jesus Never Existed at All. And I also did a book a little after that about the Mormons, and I've just come out with a follow-up book to Nailed. It's part of the series we call the Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion, and this one is called Jesus Mything in Action. And basically what it does is takes all the arguments I hear from atheists who try to tell me that, oh no, we've got good evidence that there was a guy named Jesus, and points out that whether there was a Jesus or not, we don't have good evidence for him at all.
Excellent. And we'll get a lot more into that. But for now, we'll do our favorite segment that we all like, called Another Brilliant Moment, brought to you by religion. Now, did you guys know that ancient mummies can give you sound medical advice? And of course, during a segment of the 700 Club, a viewer with multiple sclerosis told a man who won the most likely will be resembling melted ice cream contest, Pat Robertson, that she feels abandoned by God because she frequently watches his show in hopes of being healed during his faith healing segment, but has so far seen no results. What? Sherlock.
Yeah. Wow.
Robertson replied that the healing, in fact, is for everyone, and that he has personally witnessed and has been involved in miraculous healing of MS. Quote,
so clearly it's her fault.
Totally. Quote, I know this sounds strange, but I do believe there is a spiritual component in MS. It's like a demonic. It's one of those things that you literally have to cast out, he said. I have been seen people with MS get up out of a wheelchair and push the wheelchair out of the room where we were. I've seen it. I've been involved in it.
It worked almost as well as they've been faking it the whole time.
That's right. I know. Those nasty demons, they interfere with everything Pat Robertson wants to do.
Why doesn't Pat Robertson just tour all the hospitals in the country? Why is he just stuck there where he is?
Why do I keep feeling like I want to be sick?
Oh, goodness.
Those nasty demons against God. That's why.
Oh, the MS demons. They're quite notorious, right? The MS demons.
They probably give him unclean dreams at night, too.
Maybe if it did, it would make a better person out of him. I don't know.
I do have a pet theory that Pat Robertson's been dead for years. They just thaw him out every time they put him on the show and put him back in the freezer after. He's been along for way too long. So, on that cheery moment, I've got another nice little story. Apparently, a Harvard Library website that offers the ways to spot fake news. I know this is very big right now, fake news. Links to an Harvard Google Doc with tips for analyzing news sources. The document lists hundreds of false, misleading, clickbait, or satirical news sources, and the list includes the Institution for Creation Research.
Nice.
As soon as they learned of it, they contacted the assistant professor behind the list, a Harvard journalism web resource that linked to the list, and the Harvard Library that also linked to the list. Our respectful request for removal from the list, they say. After all, ICR.org does not report false news, misleading news, clickbait, or satire, without a variety of results.
You meant unintentional satire.
Oh, that's right. Our respectful this initial request for removal state that ICR News report includes contribution from scientists with terminal degrees from prestigious universities, including Harvard. Should those who kick ICR to the curb likewise consider these institutions as gutter dwellers? So, in other words, if you have an engineer from Harvard who said that biology is debunked,
like Henry Morris did,
then I guess you should be kicking all of Harvard to the curb because this guy graduated from Harvard. That's their logic. So the false news list originally noted ICR's inclusion on the list for a reason labeled as junk science. Quote, ICR actually tries to expose some junk science. We also pass tests listed on the false doc. For example, a website URL does not end with LO or com.co. We specify authorship, post-vetted articles instead of unscreened blog posts, and we use standard font configurations. Blah, 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 blah.
Now, let's be PC. There is no junk science. There's only alternate facts.
Clearly it was a talking snake.
Oh, my God. This show is going. So I've lost my spot here.
Go ahead, try to keep going. Go ahead, try to keep going with a straight face, Kevin. Your challenge of the week.
They keep going. They say many find it easier to simply label the Bible as junk than to actually investigate it. If they peered inside, they would find that the Bible is painfully true, to the point that it exposes that junk.
He's half right anyway.
Sorry?
He's half right anyway.
Painfully true, yes. We challenge readers to search for legitimate junk on ICR.org, blah, blah, blah. So, any thoughts on how we should respond to these creationist butthurt?
I think Obamacare covers that.
Not for long. That's her answer to the creationist. Oh, my God. Well, thank you so much for that, guys. I wanted your opinion, but we just laughed it all out. It just said it all.
What else can you say?
All right, so David, let's talk about you and your book. So your new book, Jesus Mythic in Action, is out now.
Right. It is out now. I'm so delighted that
I've ordered my copy, and you should do the same. All of you. I'm talking to all of you here.
Yes, of course.
Yes, absolutely. So what can you tell us your book?
It's okay. As you know, Nailed took on the top 10 ways that the official story of Jesus just doesn't hold water, does not cut it, and it really was meant to take all the wind out of the sails of Christians who are trying to tell us that it's incontrovertible that there was a Jesus. In fact, I had a chapter in there called "Can Jesus Be Saved?" where I said, if all these things were different, maybe we would have a better chance of thinking that there had actually been a Jesus. But it doesn't hold water. When I wrote that book 7 years ago, I thought, okay, that's all that needs to be said, really, honestly. But one of the things that surprised me wasn't that Christians hated the book so much, because they sure did. Who didn't just disagree with it. I mean, that's nothing special. But they hated the book. All their red flags for pseudoscience and alt science were going off the chart, saying, "Oh, this is fake history. This is, creationism for atheists." That was my favorite line they gave. And so it became pretty obvious pretty soon that I was going to have to write a book dealing with these atheist arguments, and that's what Jesus Mything in Action is. It talks about the state of biblical studies and the state of Jesus studies in particular, and it goes into our sources for Jesus, because the first thing you need to say, if you want to know what Jesus really said or really did or who he was or what he was, you got to ask, well, what's our sources for this? And that's what we do in the book, is we go through the sources, starting with the Gospel of Mark, which is our original biographical source of Jesus, then all the other Gospels that were taken from that one, and then we go into the rest of the New Testament, the earliest Christians, what their Jesus was like, why it was different from the Jesus of the Gospels. And the last thing I do is, it's called The Gospel According to H.G. Wells, where I take a note from Cosmos, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Carl Sagan, and the way they did with a spaceship that could go anywhere in time and space. I do with a time machine and go through a little evolutionary history of Christianity and then kind of a you are there sort of a thing.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very fun. And it's 3 books. It's a 3-volume set, and it didn't start out that way. But when I was talking to Dave Smalley, my audiobook guy, I was telling him, yeah, it's kind of a big book. It's about 500 pages, and so I'm hoping that's not going to be a problem. He says, wait, you said that the word count was how much? I said, well, it's about 250,000 words. And the page count was what? And I said, well, it's about 500. He says, okay, is that 8.5 by 11, or is that 6 by 9? I went, oh, no. So it turns out the book is closer to 900 pages. So that's why it's 3 books. Oh. And that's why there's a 3-book series and then tucked in the middle of a ongoing series now.
So you did the voiceover yourself?
I haven't done that yet. That's next. But we've got the ebook, and the paperback is out.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So in going back to the arguments, you said like the Gospel of Mark is your base. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mark is the basis for all the other Gospels, right?
Exactly. And what's funny about that is it's the most no-frills, low-rent, fallible human Jesus we've got. It's the least impressive Jesus of all of them. He's a kind of a sad sack Jesus, and he dies in misery on the cross. We don't even hear what his teachings are or anything like that. It's basically the story of this guy who dies on the cross to become our Savior, basically. And he doesn't even start out as the Son of God. He gets adopted as the Son of God at his baptism. And because he's so obedient, he's exalted to Lord at his death. And when you read the gospel the way the early Christians did, the first Christians didn't have him as a guy who had been on earth at all. He was completely mythological, completely off camera. When you had Mark write his gospel, it seems really clear that it was an allegory, and that he even expected the more well-read members of his audience to recognize it as that, because he's got places that didn't exist before he wrote his Gospels that have very apt names, like Arimathea doesn't really exist. It never was. There's no attestation for it before the Gospels are written, and that's the only place it's attested to for hundreds of years until they start guessing every single place that starts with an A or an R. Well, maybe that's Arimathea, No, that's Ramathoin. No, that's something that, anything that sounded even remotely close to Arimathea, they would say that was the site of it. But there never was an Arimathea, and Richard Carey has pointed out that Arimathea in Aramaic basically means best discipleville. So you get all these things that are clearly allegorical, these character names that are clearly allegorical, making a story that's taking elements from the old Hebrew scriptures and creating a biography for somebody that was a mystery faith god before that.
So okay, so and on top of that, correct me if I'm wrong yet again. Apparently, there are parts of Mark that are added on after the original author.
Yeah, absolutely. And most notable about that is the ending of Mark, which originally ends with the women running from the tomb and not telling anyone. And that's kind of his nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the audience. And that's why you've never heard this story before, is because those silly women went out and they didn't tell anybody.
To be continued.
To be continued. And then, of course, that was never going to sit. So we've got at least 3 different endings to the Gospel of Mark that we know of, including the ones that are in our Bible. And then you've got Matthew, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and then much later John after that.
Yeah.
But by the time we get to Luke and John, we're already talking about the 2nd century.
Wow.
Yeah.
So besides, there are other Gospels that people don't really talk about. The Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Thomas. Have you ever had a chance to take a look at these?
Sure. In fact, it's fascinating. You see the story starting very small with Mark. Then Matthew comes along and corrects a lot of his mistakes about Judaism. Then Luke comes around and makes his Jesus even tougher and more godly, more inflappable than Matthew's. John comes around and his Jesus doesn't even pretend to be anything but God walking around in the flesh. And it's ridiculous when you read John's Gospel, really, because it's like, how did this guy not get stoned for blasphemy to death 5 minutes out of the gate?
He's kicking ass and taking names, right?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
And he's such a douchebag too. He's such a clear Republican and anti-Semitic. Well, when you get outside the Bible, then you get Gospels like the Gospel of Peter. And the Gospel of Peter was super popular. It was much more popular than the Gospel of Mark at the time. In fact, we're lucky to still have the Gospel of Mark because basically Matthew is Mark 2.0. Luke steals from Matthew and Mark, and yeah, it could be completely gone and no one would have missed it because the Gospel of Peter is even more awesome. It's got, Jesus comes out of the grave and he's suddenly 500 feet tall. There's these 500 feet tall angels helping him out. And then the cross comes out of the grave and the cross starts talking. It's got a talking cross.
Oh, wow.
This is what we're dealing with.
I would have loved to see a 500-foot tall Jesus fight Godzilla. I would love to see that. Somebody needs to make that video.
I'd watch that movie.
I'd totally watch that.
Yeah. And then you've got these weird gospels like the Gospel of Thomas. And the Gospel of Thomas, wouldn't even think of it as a gospel because it's a saying source. It's a group of all these connected sayings, and it implies, if not says outright, that you get saved by knowing the secret wisdom that Jesus taught. And here it is from the Gospel of Thomas, who was Jesus' twin. Thomas actually isn't the name; it's the Hebrew word for twin. In fact, it was the name for the constellation, the twins, in Hebrew or Aramaic. I forget which. I believe Hebrew.
Wow.
So you've got the whole Doubting Thomas character just seems to be another spin, another mutation on the Jesus story because his name is supposed to be Thomas Didymus the twin. Well, Didymus means twin, Thomas means twin, so you got twin the twin. This is the kind of names we're talking about in here.
Call me Twin Square.
Yes, Twin Square, yeah. I'm Twinlington, the twin.
I think they were trying to make a point there.
Absolutely. And the thing is that we don't quite notice it, but they expected their readers to get that. The ones who were in the know, they would know what they were doing. They were really talking about these highfalutin spiritual things like astrology and numerology. But the common folk would just think of it as a great story. And it worked because as soon as Mark writes a story of Jesus as a biography, everybody loved it. It was you didn't have to be smart. You could be dumb as a post and still appreciate the story.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
Everyone's looking at you, Kevin.
I know. Well, this just in from one of our listeners. Ask David how he came with the title. It says a great title, Mything in Action.
Oh, thank you. Once you have a title like that, you have to write the book, right?
Which came first, the title or the book?
It came to him in a dream.
Yeah.
It came to him, a beautiful dream from heaven. Yes, angels brought it.
Was there a talking serpent in that dream?
I knew I had to have myth in the title somehow. And, you read enough Robert Aspirin books, you get all, make sure you don't steal one of his titles. And then the mything in action, once you hit that, it was perfect. The double meaning was just irresistible.
Now, I know a lot of even atheists that believe that Jesus was a person and all that, and they always cite Bart Ehrman. They always go for Bart Ehrman.
Sure.
In which argument do you think that Bart Ehrman has that is compelling to you, or are they easily debunked, all of them? I haven't read him myself.
Gotcha. Well, like I said, I love Bart Ehrman. I've been saying for years that for such a staunch historicist, he's one of the best mythicist writers out there. And he's kind of sitting on a branch that he sawed off years ago. Robert Price made that comment. And it's been interesting to see when he wrote "Did Jesus Exist?" Then he wrote, from Jesus to Christ, from how Jesus became God or Christ became God. And as he's getting further and further, he's realizing that things that he was taking as established facts aren't quite as established as he thought they were. Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious to see what's he going to be writing about in 5 or 10 years. Oh, wow. As he gets more into it. Actually, before we get too far down this rabbit hole, that's one thing I want to say to all those atheists out there who are convinced that there was a Jesus, or maybe a couple Jesuses that got amalgamated. This isn't a fight between mysticists and historicists. This is a fight between people who take mythicism seriously and those that dismiss it out of hand. The reason it's even worth arguing about for atheists is not because it's the death knell for Christianity. It's kryptonite for Christianity. But as atheists, everything we learn in the back and forth between this argument, between the guys who say, oh yeah, there was a Jesus, and the guys who say, nah, I don't think so, everything we learn helps call the bluff of anybody out there who's trying to say that they know what Jesus thought and how Jesus wants you to behave and think and vote. This blows all that out of the water. Because at the end of the day, I don't think there was a Jesus, full stop. And there's many reasons for that. But even if there was a Jesus, as Robert Price has pointed out, for all extents and purposes, there isn't one anymore, because everything that we know about that guy comes from sources that were written to have nothing to do with anybody who actually lived in the first century.
Yes, indeed.
And that is good for atheists to know.
I've got a friend of mine who's studying to become a Christian apologist, and we get into debates, him and I. He's a really nice Christian, and I'm not going to name him, but he always challenges me. He says it's not fair. He says, you're telling me that you don't think Jesus existed, but yet you're not applying the same standard of evidence that you're applying, for example, Alexander the Great. He says we have very little evidence for Alexander the Great either. What would your response to that be?
The opposite is true. It's like everything we have on anybody in the ancient world. Alexander the Great's a great example. We have multiple lines of evidence that support the idea that there was an Alexander the Great, as opposed to just a myth of Alexander the Great or a legend of Alexander the Great. We've got physical evidence. We've got written evidence. We've got the actual physical brute facts that things could not have happened unless he actually had taken his army and gone through all these places and conquered them. You couldn't just fake that. Whereas everything we know about Jesus, it can all be explained by people believing what someone told them about that. That even if there had been a Jesus, he basically is irrelevant for what became Christianity.
Yeah, I guess it's very hard to ignore the scarring an army can leave on the landscape.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even linguistics left its mark on there. And there's Greek cities out in Asia that were lost for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe hundreds. Yeah. But again, it's everything that gives us confidence, and every historical claim, full stop, is weighted according to how much confidence we have in it. And when you look at the evidence for them, that's how certain we can be. We can be certain there is a guy named Paul who was there. We can be certain that most of what we know about him is not true, and that half of what he wrote was not written by him. We can be reasonably confident that there was a John the Baptist, but it's not a full lock, not as certain as it is for Paul. And when we look at the evidence for Jesus, not only do we not have evidence we should have, But we also have evidence like the book of Hebrews and some of the ways that the epistle writers in the New Testament talk about him. That's like, okay, why would you be saying that if this was a real guy who really existed? We've got all these things that didn't make it, early Christian writings that didn't make it into the Bible, that say things like, the way Jesus appeared to humanity was there was this beautiful star and it broke all the magical spells and freed everyone. It's like, whoa, we didn't hear that story from anybody. You know, that's not the Bethlehem star you're talking about.
I still like the Matthew story of the zombies rising from the grave and walking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have great historical accounts of boring ass things that were happening in Jerusalem at that time, but somehow everyone misses the joint earthquakes and the mass zombie resurrection.
At the time, zombies weren't that popular, I guess.
And what cracks me up is apologists will use arguments like, "Oh no, we have evidence that there was earthquakes in Bithynia and these other places." And it's like, yeah, we have evidence for earthquakes in other places, so why don't we have evidence in Jerusalem? You know, those are 500 miles away, and you're saying that's supposed to be evidence of your earthquake in Jerusalem? Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
So. For yourself, David, what for you was the nail in the coffin that turned
for me?
Yeah,
personally,
the one that was more convincing to you.
Well, it took about 2 years before increasingly going. First of all, the first red flag for me was when I realized, wait, this is all the evidence we have. This is it, and how shaky it was. And then realizing, for me, it boiled down to this one central paradox that either Jesus said all these amazing new teachings or did all these amazing miracles, and no one noticed outside his little bitty cult for, 100 years or more, or he didn't do these things, he didn't teach these remarkable things even, and yet as soon as he's dead, you have all these feuding little cults scattered all over the empire, not just in Jerusalem, not just in Galilee, but in, Alexandria, in Syria, in Greece, and Rome, and they can't agree about the first thing about who this guy was, or who hung out with him, or what he taught. And it's like that alone, that just sheer fact alone, I knew something was up. And then when you start reading like Earl Doherty, Richard Carrier, Robert Price, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm not the only one saying this stuff here.
Is it true that, at the time of his supposed life, there were several candidates for messianic savior?
Oh, absolutely. Right? In fact, I talk about them in the book. There's about 15 that I talk about. And these are just the ones we know of. There were probably more of them because this time was a messianic hot time for... and I even talk about why that is, why the early first century became that time.
And this is what bothers me, because it seems that even these guys, these candidates for Messiah, didn't really do anything remarkable.
Right.
Yet left to
footprint. Exactly. That's exactly it. They did something Jesus didn't do, and the historians took notice of them.
And that's amazing to me. I mean, and we do have contemporary writings about these people.
Yep,
we do. And for apparently the most charismatic man of all time, we've got nothing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, he's supposed to have had attracted multitudes, and here's the thing. And I'm mostly concentrating on what secular historians are saying about Jesus, because Christian historians, they're already out the window. It's like, yeah, you believe that the zombies came out in Jerusalem and no one noticed that either. It's like, that's just not going to wash. But for Christian historians, what they tend to do is they say, okay, here's our things. We'll just snip out all the things that couldn't have happened and the miracles here, and whatever's left must be the truth of what happened. And it doesn't quite work that way. Some of these stories only make sense if they're making the point that this miracle happened, If nothing happened, then you can't have a story around it, if you know what I mean. Completely lost my train of thought now. And then...
We'll edit this.
Well, it's the secular historians who are saying that, oh no, if we just sort out the miraculous, what we have left is the truth. And even the mundane aspects of Jesus' life don't hold up. His trial, for instance. Bart Ehrman's pointed this out, that none of the reconstructed Jesuses that we have can make sense of why the Romans would have given a rat's ass about him, let alone kill him, and why the Jews didn't just stone him to death for blasphemy, and why, in fact, the charge of blasphemy doesn't even hold up, And as you point out, there are all these other messiahs at the time, too, who didn't get stoned for blasphemy either. So nothing makes sense in like the trial of Jesus, for an example. And if you're taking your source materials, you've got the Gospel of John, who doesn't even try to match up the historical biography that we get from the other ones. Yeah. They're either in lockstep copying, cut and pasting Mark literally, or they're twisting it and taking it in directions, adding to it, and going off in their own directions, making their own theological statements about it.
Okay, perfect. Guys, you got a question for David?
No.
I've answered all the questions. Yay! My work is done.
I just appreciate the way you handle the material, in such a logical way, but it's not beyond a layman's understanding of what happened, and you set this up to really make me more curious to read the book, which is great. It just leads the listener and the reader down so many different paths to get information, both for your own pleasure and knowledge, and also to have as debate material, if that is the kind of activity that you enjoy. So thank you for both.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what I wanted to do, because there's awesome books out here on the subject, but they're huge books and they're dense books, and we don't have a lot of really accessible material to it. And I'm happy to be like the greeter at Walmart who welcomes you into this and says, if you're looking for that, you want to go over here, and go a little deeper, get over here. I'm very happy to be that.
No, and it's great that you did divide it, because now it's so portable. People who are on a plane and want to read a book, they don't need to have something the size of a watermelon to try and put in their bag to carry. So it was a brilliant way to make it more interesting and more affordable and more portable.
I'm so glad you thought so, because I spent many sleepless nights going, oh no, it's going to be 3 books. No one's going to buy 3 books.
I can say I'm going to be purchasing the books. I'm in discussions with that same apologist that Kevin was talking about, and he's trying some hard to convince me there was a Jesus. And of course, I just tell him, well, reserve judgment on that, because I don't have any evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I could hardly put down the book, the 10 myth, the Jesus. I could hardly put it down. I just went through it like that, and I can't wait to see your new book. And speaking of your book over there,
he's pointing.
Your previous book, how successful was that one, David, for you?
It's still selling. And we actually just released a Portuguese translation for Brazil and Portugal, and I'm really excited about that to see how that takes off. All these books came out basically in the same week 2 weeks ago, so this is all brand new stuff.
Excellent. All right, well, you know what, David, thank you so much for your time, but now the mic is all yours. Feel free, be shameless, promote yourself, my friend, and go right ahead. Where can people find you?
I'm delighted to be here, first of all. Thanks for having me back, you guys. The best way to find me is just go on Facebook and hang up either The Complete Heritage's Guide to Western Religion or David Fitzgerald, and find me that way. I will tell you this. I learned something interesting. If you've got the ebook, if you have a Kindle book, you can actually have your author autograph a Kindle now. So ask me about that. They've got a program for that lets you do that. If you want an autographed copy of the hard copy book, I'm very happy to sell that directly to your listeners. So just contact me directly and say, I'd like to get a hard copy book. And I will do it, I think, even as cheap, or if not cheaper than Amazon would do it anyway.
So
tell Amazon.
So if I send you my copy of the book with the little toaster
you don't even have to do that.
No, but I can send it with the toaster oven at the same time, right?
Sorry, I missed all that. It's something funny. There's a website called Authorgraph, and I'll put a link on my page if I don't have one already. But basically, you look me up, and there's the books that send
us the link. We'll put it in the notes of the show too. That'd be great. Got it. Now, Dave, this is your third time now. You're like in first place with Arden Raw as the most frequent guest on our show. But before I let you go, can I get you to say, hi, I'm David Fitzgerald, and I took a left at the Valley.
Hi, I'm David Fitzgerald, and I took a left at the Valley.
And that was David Fitzgerald, the one, the only You just love this guy.
I was just going to say this. I just love him. He's got knowledge. He's got enthusiasm. He just relates to whoever he's talking to. He's just so down to earth.
He's totally relatable. That's the thing. Right?
He really is. I know I can't marry him, but I wonder, can I adopt him? Is there a way I can adopt him? I mean, Gallagher, Fitzgerald. No, that's not going to work either. We got to figure out a way to get this guy.
Yes,
get this guy as a personal
Canadian
relative. Yeah, something.
Sometimes when you deal with the historicity of Jesus, it's a very heavy topic, and you deal with Richard Carrier and Robert Price and very heavy-duty academics and stuff like that, and sometimes you have a hard time understanding them, especially if you're a dumbass like myself. But David just brings it in a tone that I totally understand, and I totally relate to him, and just right away, you can't help it.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, he was questioning whether or not people would buy 3 books, but I think when you buy the first book, how could you not buy the other 2? Sure. And
I will be for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
and then you can get them autographed.
Oh yes, we'll have to send him that little toaster oven at the same time. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Coming up next week, we'll be talking about revisiting Dying with Dignity. That should be interesting.
Sue Hewson, one of my favorite people.
We haven't talked about that for a while.
It's a heavy subject.
And on the 15th, we'll have our Easter debate with Chris Christensen versus Tyler, a friend of the show. And on the 22nd, we'll be talking to Cara Santa Maria. And
power lineup.
Yes, power lineup. And I'm not sure exactly what's happening after that, but we'll stay tuned with all that stuff.
Well, I don't know. Can we top it after those 3? That's our challenge.
Oh, I think so.
We always do, don't we?
You can follow us at leftofthevalley.com. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter. You can send us an email at leftatvalley@outlook.com. You can send your complaints to Nancy at leftofthevalley.com.
Third floor.
Send us an email. Tell us what you think. Would you like to hear anything? We're all very open. Hey, we can even bring you on the show if you want to at some point. That's not a problem. Anything you guys want to talk about besides that? Are we done?
No, it's a gorgeous day. We had a great show. Let's go do it and wait for next week.
That's right.
Sunshine. We need sunshine.
Enjoy your week, guys. Until next time.
Say that Horus isn't real, but Jesus is. Or Zeus, Thor, Mithra, Vishnu, you don't believe in them. I think the reason is apparent. You do what you're told and believe in the God assigned by your parents. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. Now let me take a sec. Don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.